So, The Suicide Squad looks to be one of the more unique comic book movies releasing this year, and while what we have now looks amazing to say the least, I'm going to talk about some recent information relating to the Suicide Squad that has recently come to light. Now, James Gunn, the director of the Suicide Squad, recently was apparently talking about other members of the squad from the comics that he originally considered putting in the film. Now, from what Gunn has said, these could have been really cool ideas for the movie. Now, to make this a bit easier to follow, I divide the list into two sections, the Batman villains and the other villains. So, I've done this because there are quite a few Batman villains that James Gunn did consider putting in the film, and this is going to be really cool, so let's get into it. So starting off with the Batman villains, because there are quite a few heavyweights on the list here, and the first one on the list, funnily enough, is Deathstroke. Now this is interesting because we don't really know whether this would be Joe Manganiello's version of the character, or if it would have been an entirely different actor. I used to think that maybe when Idris Elba got cast in the Suicide Squad, at the time we didn't know who he was going to be playing, I originally thought that maybe he would have been playing a recast version of Deathstroke, and maybe the film takes place after the Flash movie. Obviously, that's not true now, and Idris Elba is playing Bloodsport, but, I mean, it would have been cool to see Idris Elba as a different version of Deathstroke, maybe an Elseworlds sort of deal. But this film is set in the DCEU, so there are certain grounds that have to be followed, but, I mean, it would have been really cool to see Idris Elba as Deathstroke. I mean, I would have been down for that. Okay, another Batman villain on the list is Mr. Freeze. Now, when we first got news of the movie's cast, I initially thought that Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor, would be playing Mr. Freeze. Obviously, he's playing the Thinker, and we've known that for quite a while, probably since DC Fandom last year. But I remember thinking, if Peter Capaldi's character is bald and requires facial prosthetics, that made me think, well, he's got to be playing Mr. Freeze, because in a lot of continuities, Mr. Freeze does have, like, wires coming out of his face. So I thought, well, if he's playing Mr. Freeze, that's a pretty good deal. But seeing Capaldi in the film at all is great, especially for Doctor Who fans, and I think Capaldi's casting in the film is actually going to draw a lot of Doctor Who fans to this film and into the sort of the DC Universe aesthetic. Other Batman-related villains that Gunn didn't use included Solomon Grundy. He's basically a giant zombie. You might remember him from the Arkham City boss fight. Man-Bat, again from Arkham Knight, you might remember him there. KG Beast, who sort of appeared in Batman v Superman, and in the comics, Batman apparently left him for dead. Oh well. And Black Spider, and while all of these sound interesting, some of these characters apparently, they did appear in the Batman Assault on Arkham film, but these still sound like some very cool choices. Okay, now we're getting to the other ones on this list. Now, these aren't necessarily Batman villains, and I gotta say, a lot of these are really cool. Firstly, it seems that Gunn might have even tried to include Black Manta in the film, which meant that Yahya Abdul-Mateen II might have even reprised his role from Aquaman, but much like Deathstroke, we simply don't really know if it could have been him or another actor entirely. So, it would have been cool to see Black Manta pop up. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, he is a member of the Suicide Squad in some of the New 52 stuff, so it would have been cool to see him pop up. You never know. So, there are quite a few other villains. Some of them are kind of obscure, and they include Rainbow Creature, Killer Frost, Livewire, Chemo, and Knockout. And if Killer Frost sounds familiar, watch the Flash TV show. You can thank me later. So from what I was able to gather, these all sound like very interesting ideas, but while it would have been cool to see some heavyweights like Deathstroke and Black Manta in the movie, I think James Gunn really knew what he was doing using some of these more obscure characters like Polka Dot Man and the Ratcatcher. I mean, while all these villains sound ridiculous to the point of actually trying to be funny, I mean, it's a great route that James Gunn is going with this, and I can't wait to see what he pulls off with these characters. I mean, sure, maybe a big handful of them are going to get killed off. I mean, a lot of them are going to get killed off, let's be honest here. But I'm really excited to see what James Gunn is going to pull off with the Suicide Squad, and this looks to be one of the more unique superhero films. And it is R-rated as well, so it's going to be following in that track record of superhero movies that are rated R doing extremely well. So films like the Deadpool movies as well, they've done extremely well at the box office, and I expect Gunn's Suicide Squad movie to possibly do the same thing. And that does it for this video. If you guys have any other ideas about what you want to see in the Suicide Squad, or maybe villains you'd like to see possibly in a sequel, then let me know in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like and subscribe, and go and check out my new podcast, The Movie Geeks with Brandon Prime. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys soon. Take care.